All right, everyone. Now in this video, we're going to talk about something called structural data types. By now, you should have gone over primary data types. Examples of these are, for example, strings and numbers and booleans and such. For example, a string in this case is something like this. Hello, that's a string. This is a number. A boolean is either true or false, and so on. In addition to these data types, there are, as these primary data types, there are other data types that are more complex of their nature, and they are called structural data types. And these different data types we can divide in under three, or actually two groups, but I will divide them in under three, and I will explain why later. The first one is an object, and an object in JavaScript is like a container with attributes. And a good example of this is, for example, a car could be an object, and a car could, for example, have a brand, a model, and a year that it was produced. So how we could define a car object would, in this case, be something like we first create a constant. We call this car, and then we set this equal to curly brackets. And when I set curly brackets like this, it means that I'm defining an object. When an object comes with key value pairs, and the key value pairs are what defines its attributes. And as I said earlier, a car can, for example, have a brand. Then the brand is a key, so brand. And to assign a value to this key, I simply can put in any value I want after this colon. But as a brand, it would probably make sense to have a string. So I can write here Volvo, for example. To continue writing attributes for an object, we have to separate them by commas. So I will write a comma here, and then I will jump down on the next row. And this could, of course, be in a line too, but for making it easier to read, I would take it row by row. The next attribute that a car could have could be a model. Every car has a model. And I will say here XC60. And the car could possibly also have a year that it's been created. And we can say that this is a very new, nice car. So it's created in 2021. So here we basically have a car object. And this is if I would, for example, write out console.log and then type of car, and then say this, and we refresh this, we will see that we get out object here, because this is an object. The second one, structural data type that I'm going to go over, is actually an object too, but it's a little bit different because it's actually a list object, basically, and this is called an array, and these we worked with a lot in JavaScript. And what this is, what an array is basically a container of values, or a list of values. And you define an array in this way. So, for example, if we want an array of cars, we can say, then we can set this equal to straight brackets instead. And straight brackets like this means that we assign an array to the value, to the variable of cars. And here we could, for example, do a variable, an array of strings. So we can do Volvo, and you separate each value in an array by a comma. And we can do BMW, and we can say Mercedes. So this is an array, and by, for example, iterating over this, I can write out and manipulate the different items that this array contains, and we will look at more at arrays later. But this is an important concept in JavaScript, and an important type of data that it's important to have knowledge about. And if I would, with this array, console.log type of cars, we would see that we now probably will get an object. Yes, since array is not a data type of its own, because it's an object as well. But for the matter of understanding, we separate it out into a data type of its own. So it's treated differently from objects, and it has different methods assigned to it, which we will talk about more later as well. The last of the structural data types is a function. And a function, you guys should have gone over quickly before, but what a function basically does is a block of code that runs when called upon. So for example, if I write const display cars, and I'm using arrow function syntax here, then I want this function to return the cars array. So this array here. And when you call upon a function, it's a little bit different, and we can do this by using our console.log again. Console.log. So if I would, for example, here just write display cars, then it will console.log out the actual block of code and not what it's returning to us. So if I'm saving this and refreshing this, we see that we get returned this. This is what we console.log out. But if we want to actually log out what the function is actually returning, or the code that it fires, we have to attach an empty parentheses after it and then save it. And if I refresh now, we see that we get the cars array, since it's returning, which is defined up here. And if I would write out type of to check what data type our function is, of display cars and save, it should say function. See, function. Okay, that is the different structural data types that exist. And in the next video, we're gonna look deeper into the object data type.